Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. Is it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday, the 1st of April, 2021. Very good welcome. Very good morning to you on this day. I have not had an echo device suggested Bible verse in a long time. I had a verse ready for this morning, and I did my morning update from my echo device. And the verse that she shared this morning was 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. I thought that might be a nice verse just to encourage us. And we need each other. We really do. We need each other in difficult times. And again, I never want to try to compare the difficult time we're going through to many parts of the world, but it's challenging. We got our update for the COVID restrictions Tuesday evening, and there's not much happening. You look at all the stuff going on, and talking to somebody yesterday about all the inconsistencies and the laws, regulations and ideas and notions and false numbers, and oh my goodness, it's just and the news just seems to get worse and worse. And I wish that sometimes I wasn't such a news addict, because don't even want to listen to it now, and I have anyway. But there's times like this when God wants us to do something about it. 1 Peter 4, verse 10, as suggested by my handy echo device this morning, says this: as each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. And then verse 11 goes on to say, if anyone speaks, let him speak as to the oracles of God. If anyone ministers, let him do it as with the ability that God supplies, that in all things God might be glorified through Jesus Christ. It will be the glory and the dominion forever and ever. What's he saying here? What's Peter saying? Just a simple thing this morning. He says each of us has different abilities and gifts that God's given us. Some people have good teaching ability. Some people have good speaking ability. Some people have hospitality. Some people have the ability to be friendly. Some people have, but all of us have our own traits. Some people have the ability to be a good friend, or the kind of person you can confide in. All of those are special things that God gives us. Many are musically talented. So these are all things that God does for us. So what do we do with those gifts that God gives us? What do we do with the abilities and the traits and the talents that God has given us? What do we do with them? Well, Peter tells us right here. He says, minister to each other. Be good stewards of God's grace. Boy, that's a great verse. Be good stewards of God's grace. I probably should have titled this little talk that, be a good steward of God's grace. God's given us grace, and he wants us to steward his grace in the world today and steward his grace to those around us. And the reason, of course, is that Jesus might be glorified in our lives and men might be drawn to Christ. But today, what's the practical point for you and me today? What can we take out of this passage? Think about others. Think about how we can help others. Look for those opportunities that God gives us through today to be a help and to be an encouragement. I know Ireland's kind of unique because nobody's basically under the restrictions that we're under, but we do have opportunities. We can text somebody or email them, or the old-fashioned thing, even give them a call on the phone, even, and go for a walk. Try to meet people. Try to encourage somebody that you see who's looking down. Those are things. That's how we be stewards of God's grace. We have hope. We have the hope the world doesn't have. The world that is never going to have without Christ. We have that hope because of the grace of God, and it's our job to be wise stewards, to be good stewards of God's grace. And we need to get our thoughts off of ourselves. We need to get our thoughts and our pity parties off of what's going on in our lives, and look for opportunities how we can use the gift God gives us to serve each other. Service. That's what Christian life is all about. Being good stewards of God's grace. God's wonderful, amazing, incomprehensible grace God's given us, and we need to steward that to others. As we serve, do it with the ability that God gives us, that he might be glorified. God uses the least expected of us to do his work. So let's let God use us as those tools. Let's remember, serve each other today. Be a good steward of God's grace to the world around us. What a blessing, what a thought, what a challenge that is. Even when we get down and the news just seems to be mind-boggling in its complexity and its strangeness, strangers. We can't get our thoughts off into all that. Keep our minds on Jesus Christ. Minister to others and be a wise steward of God's grace. Listen, God bless you guys. See you tomorrow, God willing.